at 6:11 p.m. With a special JPL committee meeting. Do we need to call roll?
I will just announce. So we have members of the JPL present, which is Trustee Amenta, Trustee Carpenter, and Trustee Ursink, as well as Trustee Bachworth as representative from the Pet and Bike Safety Committee. And then staff, we have Clerk and Tyler Burkhart, and Rachel Ellerman is Chair of Pet and Bike, and Jennifer Baltus is Chair of the Parks Commission. So with that, we can proceed.
Great. Has this meeting been publicly noticed according to law?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is discussion and possible consideration of committee structure for the Parks Commission and Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee. So Tyler, I think I'm going to turn this over to you if you want to start there, and then we'll kind of get into discussion after that.
That'd be great. So I've had the pleasure of working so far in the village for just over 5 years. And I've had 5 different committees that I've staffed. And so I've been able to see a few different structures. And we're very fortunate to have so many people volunteer and not just be part of a committee, but be an active participant. I can tell you that that is not the case in other communities. I mean, they're barely getting people to apply. And then when they're on the committee, they may not be actively involved with the committee. Here, we have tons of people willing to apply and several people as active participants. Shorewood is unique in the sense that we have a pedestrian and bicycle safety committee. That's a very rare committee in several municipalities. I think that focus makes a lot of sense in Shorewood because of our density and walkability and bikeability factors. So I think that concentration and that focus is important, and we don't want to lose that. However, after the 5 years of staffing both parks and pet and bike, I wanted to just, not that I'm, for this idea, I just felt like it was worth talking about for the JPL committee, is how we can have parks and pet and bike combine their efforts. When I was in Minnesota, I was on a parks commission for a few years. For Northfield, Minnesota. And Northfield's with several other communities, they don't have a pet and bike safety committee, but a lot of the pet and bike concerns comes to a parks commission, since a lot of pet and bike issues are tied in with park accessibility in that. So it's one of many things that kind of they might handle. And so there's been some things that have come up for the village where I feel having some joint effort between the two committees could be helpful. A few examples would be when we were doing the Lake Drive project with the Pet and Bike Safety Committee, with Atwater Park's proximity there to Lake Drive. I think it would have been really good to get, some feedback from the Parks Commission and have them heavily, involved in that with that lens in that project. And same thing with the Parks Commission as they're doing the comp park plan update. I think there's a lot of pet and bike safety related issues that could be tied in to that park plan update. And as much as we could maybe have, a liaison sit in on those meetings, maybe from each of the committees, like you look at like the park plan update or the Lake Drive, those took months and months and months. That would have been a really heavy commitment for a liaison on one of the other committees to sit on the other and continually update one another. So there is the possibility that if you were to combine the two committees and have a larger committee, that you have people that sit on the committee that have that, that joint lens working together. There could be some benefits. Both committees are also wanting to do more public education, which I think is awesome. Parks is working on dogs and talking about dog waste and what are the rules as a dog owner. And a lot of times when people are walking dogs, they're pedestrians. So that's another example how I think there's a direct tie-in. And when we're working on education campaigns, a lot of people need to be involved, especially if we're going to the farmers market, trying to get some community engagement, or putting on an event like the Pet and Bike Safety Committee does Pet and Bike Safety Month, which each week there's an event. So it takes a lot of coordination. So with public events, having more people available to help helps these events to be more successful. So the possibility of combining the two committees and maybe having a larger committee would provide more people available to help out with these causes and these events. One of the committees that I staff is the Conservation Committee. To be frank with you, when I first started, I thought a committee of 13 people is a lot. I've never staffed a committee that large. Usually it is only 7, or I think one committee I had was 5. So 13 I never had before. But I can tell you with my experience working with the Conservation Committee and how they structure into subcommittees, it makes a lot of sense now that I understand with how they function and with how many different events they do. It gives them more availability of people to help out when they're doing like the Environmental Film Festival, for instance. So Human Relations Commission is a recent example where we've kind of taken that concept a little bit, where we have 9 full commission members, but we have a lot of other ex officio and volunteers who serve on subcommittees. So I think that larger committee structure just allows these committees to have a little bit more perspectives involved, which I think is helpful, especially for Shorewood. And it allows to concentrate into these subcommittees or focus groups. So if you were to take that concept and if we were to consider combining these two committees, if we're worried that we would lose pedestrian and bicycle safety, for instance, you could have one of the subcommittees be that, or you could have one of the subcommittees be parks. It just, by combining them to meet always at the same time, it allows them to coordinate and combine efforts a little bit more. So just know this is just one structure style. We could easily keep Parks Commission and Pet and Bike Safety, and every quarter I could coordinate a joint meeting where they meet together. Like that could be a really simple solution too. So there's several ways that we can do this, which I am very open as your staff liaison for both of these committees. And it just so happens that both committees also meet on the same night. So there's a lot of opportunity here, but I think I've seen enough initiatives over the last few years now where I think it would be helpful for us to change the structure in just a little way, whether it's like literally how we have it in the ordinance, that structure, or just how we do the meetings, that could really help further the collaboration between the two groups.
Thank you. Does anybody have any initial thoughts, either Rachel or Jennifer? It's hard for me to call you Jennifer. But do either one of you want to start with your initial thoughts as heads of each of the committees?
I just have one question. It just seems like both of our committees have different missions. So with the mission of, say, Parks, because that's the one I'm on, would that get lost you know, if we're combined?
Tyler, do you want to answer that? Or, I mean, I have some thoughts too.
I would defer to you. I mean, I certainly have some thoughts, but I think your thoughts would be a little bit more appropriate from a staff perspective. I mean, there's certain ways that we could certainly make sure that we keep those missions and those focus points. But yeah, certainly if you like have a parks commission, I mean, that's pretty crystal clear what the, you know, what the mission of a parks commission would be. While if you had a group that was public spaces, you know, that's not calling out parks. You know, that may not be as clear just from a name perspective. I think that's why I mentioned with the subcommittees, maybe, you know, you could use the subcommittee structure to make sure that you keep those focuses. But, you know, I think that's certainly a valid concern that Jenny raises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is one of, I think, probably the biggest concerns is that, you know, the focus of parks versus pet and bike. How do we make sure that we don't lose the movement that those committees have done and the changes that they've been able to create? The thing that I sort of look to and that has been successful is in the HRC. They have created subcommittees that focus on legislation or statistics, and you know, so we have a parks subcommittee and a pet and bike subcommittee that focuses on those different aspects of sorry, those different aspects of community spaces, or whatever the title may be, and allows everyone to have a little bit more of to still have that, you know, important focus of parks and of pet and bike, because I think that those contributions have been really valuable to our community. Rachel, do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same thought. You know, how do we make sure that we're getting the best out of this arrangement as far as leveraging the collective power of two active committees? You know, is there more that we can do together? Are we stronger together? But still retain the focus that we have as well. And personally, I think, you know, there's multiple structures that could work. There's probably not one single right answer. If the genesis of this was to leverage the power of two active committees to do even greater good in the community, then I think there's a way we could pull that off. If the genesis of this is to streamline the number of meetings in a week, you know, that would definitely solve this problem. I guess my curiosity is kind of, is there a particular goal that we had in proposing the merger? And if it's basically just whatever Tyler listed off, that's fine. There's definitely some opportunities we can consider. But if there was one guiding principle, we can cross-check and make sure we're meeting that. But, you know, I think there's definitely going to be some specific questions that are bike and ped. There's going to be some specific questions that would be parks. And I think having the different perspectives will flavor our reactions to them and probably make it a richer reaction or richer programming. But, you know, there's also going to be some drawbacks no matter which way we go. So personally, I see benefits with that arrangement. I see benefits with the current arrangement. I think they can be overcome in both cases. So without a compelling reason not to, you know, and nothing is jumping out at me, provided we go in with that awareness that, you know, there are specific specialties within these two committees. And if we can find a way to preserve that and leverage the collective power of these two committees for a greater good, then let's do it.
Tammy, as the trustee liaison, do you have any initial thoughts?
No, I completely agree with what Rachel had mentioned. So, I mean, I was part of the conservation committee when we had it reinstated, but I know that's not what we're really talking about. So if that's what the membership wants, I can understand having fewer meetings and for staff time and other things. So, yeah, I agree.
And I mean, Tyler's comments about having like a public spaces committee also would allow us to respond effectively to things that fall outside of everyone's current purview, right? Like the scooter question that came up, right? You know, scooters and alternate forms of transportation. They're not bike, they're not ped, they're in the parks, they're on the streets. We know there's going to be pedestrian issues, there's going to be car issues. Who covers that? And by having sort of a broader common spaces committee, we might be able to handle some new and up and coming and weird cases like that as well more effectively.
Right. No, it does make sense also. And the open spaces or the outdoor spaces, that's something that we kicked around a long, long time ago. And one of the things that we really wanted to have was more collaboration amongst the existing resident committees. So, yeah, it does make sense in that regard.
Right, but I think, yeah, and I think I was just going to mention Jennifer, but if Jennifer really feels strongly that we can't preserve our unique missions, then that would definitely be a concern that we should examine really closely. Because I know, you know, people are very passionate about their causes and they step up to volunteer to support those causes. So if we end up losing valuable volunteers because of this merger, then that would be a significant drawback to me.
No, I just wanted to say, I think it would be really great if our missions were well defined, and we could have independent meetings within our own committees. Just because I know the people on my committee particularly, they're pretty educated on the park issues, and they also understand a lot of that stuff. Now, with I would like it to be sort of parallel. I mean, in my world, I see them as parallel committees that come together and talk about stuff and then go off and do their own work again and then come again and report to each other, that sort of thing. But it would be good to maintain a little bit of independence, I think, from each other. So public spaces, I understand, so we could, I like that idea too, Tyler, because of that wood place that's downtown, or, you know, on Oakland. It would be good for us all to sort of consider what that space means and how it can work for Shorewood and that sort of thing. And I certainly see ped and bike safety with issues there, as well as parks, frankly, for that matter.
Yeah, and I don't know if this group would consider something a little bit more agile as opposed to making a firm decision and sticking with it from heretofore, right, until the end of time. You know, maybe there's a decision where we have a transition period where we try something out. Maybe it's, you know, every other meeting we come together and have a joint meeting, or we meet for 2 months separately, and then that third month we have a joint meeting. If there's some sort of hybrid model that they might consider, to try that out and see how the missions align and how that goes. You know, that might be a good way to try it out before we buy it. But I know that would probably require another JPL meeting and shenanigans like that. So it might not be appealing to do that. But that would be a great way for us to kind of ease into it and feel it out and see how the members are reacting to it and see how the missions overlap. It's just kind of hard to do a trial on something like that when things are so strange right now. But it might be an option that would make committee members a little bit more comfortable with the idea. Just to throw that out there.
Sure. Arthur or Davida, sorry. And
yeah, can you hear me, Jessica?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, my feeling is I've gone to a couple Parks Commission meetings. I haven't gone to many, and but I was liaison to ped and bike safety one year. I mean, I do worry that they have different, here, I'm going to get up. I do worry that ped and bike safety is really focusing on safety issues, which is really important, and also transportation issues of trying to move us away from gas-powered vehicles and onto bikes and other modes of transportation. And parks, you know, it has a much different, there's some overlap in their missions, but they're really different. So I guess my suggestion would be, and I think a public spaces committee, you know, could incorporate both, but it would be a different thing. You know, it would be a new animal. It would not be ped and bike, and it would not be parks. But anyway, I was going to suggest that maybe if they could coordinate their meeting times and sort of meet together, and then separate out into separate meetings. And yeah, like Rachel's suggestion of just kind of seeing where the overlap is and what the people on the committees feel like. But I was just going to suggest joint meetings, and then that maybe will solve the too many meetings to go to. It's okay. You can go to the next one. Okay, that's my only thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Arthur? Trustee Ursing, sorry.
That's right. I kind of share the sentiment of the group here. I think, you know, there's probably a lot more overlap than we think between the two groups. When you think of parks, you think of pedestrians, and you think of biking, and when you think of biking and pedestrians, you think of open spaces and parks. So I think the two probably go really hand in hand. I would love to know what Tyler, how you think both groups would interact together. You know, how they'd work together if they kind of came together for a meeting. Would they, would that dynamic be productive? I think I'd be on board with definitely. I love Rachel's suggestion of a group meeting, and then one group meeting, and then a separate meetings for a couple months, and then a group meeting. There's probably not always going to be talking discussions where both groups are needed. It'd be great to get that insight from Bike and Ped to see what they think about. We just talked at our last meeting about Atwater. I think it'd probably be really insightful to have some of their thoughts on Atwater and what that could look like from their perspective. So I see some real value in joining that kind of joining the minds there and the thoughts, but so I'd be open to it. But I think I share everybody's sentiment here.
Tyler, what is your vision for how that would work? And in response to Trustee Ursing's thoughts on the committee, the subcommittees maybe meeting at the same time, like what do you sort of, maybe you can kind of talk through like your vision a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I hope Sarah would agree with me. You don't have to, Sarah, but when the applications come in, I think we have a lot of people that check both parks and Ped and Bike. I think already there's a lot of interest in that overlap. Not all, but I think that's something that we see pretty frequently. So with the two groups, I think, they do have common interests that would overlap, but, we have some people that are strong bike advocates that join Ped and Bike for that specific reason. We have some seniors that join Ped and Bike for senior safety and the issue of bikes on the sidewalk for that issue. So there's a few specific issues that I think really some people on that committee that if we went to this public spaces, I think they may feel that some of that gets lost. So that for me is always my number one, is my biggest concern with any thought of combining the committees, because I do think there would be some members, and Rachel and Jenny, I think you would both agree, I think there would be some members that would have a hard time with the concept. One of the reasons why we want to bring it up now is because right now we have 2 vacancies on parks and 3 on Ped and Bike. So it is something that we're looking for direction on soon, so that we can get those filled. We've been holding those vacant just in case we went to the direction of combining, so we could talk about number of people. So we're not overcommitted on the number of people that are part of the committees. But I think the personalities would certainly go well together. And Parks Commission, to answer the question about overlap of times of the committees, Parks Commission meets 5:30 to 6:30, and then Ped and Bike meets 7 to 8:30 that same night. So if we kept the 2 committees, that's where I think a model of overlapping the committees could work really well. I think we could bump up Ped and Bike safety a little bit, where there's about a 30-minute maybe overlap. And then I would just have to talk with Sarah and Rebecca as far as how we agenda-size that for each of the meetings. But we have that potential. And that would be something that I think would be another model that would work. And we could do that, you know, maybe not every time, but we could do that quarterly or bi-monthly.
Trustee Ursink, did you have
Um,
something?
are you taking applications for those for the parks right now? I may have you know, I definitely know some interested parties for that. Would you recommend somebody sending an application now just so you have it on file?
Sarah, do you know how many applications we have for each on file right now?
I do not. I know there's several. I want to say at least 8 for each. I don't know, you know, if each committee is looking for something specific. I can't speak to the fact that any of those applications kind of meet any of those specific things that each committee may be looking for. But I always say, you know, if somebody is interested, it is worth sending in the application. The vacancies come about all the time. So
People can sign up for at any time. We typically do a big wide recruitment in the early spring because the terms end in, is it May, Sarah?
yes, typically we would have been done with this. So
Yeah.
with COVID, it would have been wrapped up in May, and we recruit around the February timeframe, so that applications are in, so we can start reviewing to have the appointments for that first meeting in May. That's generally how it should work.
What are the sizes of both committees?
Each are 7. That's where it gets hard with events, because if you have a few people not available for a weekend, now you're down to 3. And it's really, sometimes that can get really difficult with like 3 people at some of these events. But so that would be a plus. But that, as I mentioned, that could be something that we work around. I mean, they're working around it now and doing it wonderfully. I just sometimes get nervous about burnout in some situation, as what some of these volunteers are willing to do at certain periods of time.
Jessica, could I ask that we have like that Tyler write what would be like just sort of not really a mission statement, but a description of the Public Spaces Committee and the areas that it's going to address, you know, so people have because we understand what Parks does and we understand what Ped and Bike does, but I think if we had something in front of us that described the new proposed committee and what its focus is going to be, then I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, you know, I think, and maybe that would also be helpful to lay out, like, I think the idea of having, and I don't know if I'm flip-flopping it, but having Ped and Bike meet first and then having Parks meet afterwards, and, you know, there's a 30-minute overlap. You know, that maybe that and being included, because I don't really know after this meeting where we go from there. If it's that we go, you know, if I don't know what we need to do from here. So, and maybe just having something in writing put together so that we can talk through it with the rest of the board and have a recommendation from there might be helpful.
Jessica.
Yeah.
One of the things that's quite interesting, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, is that the Conservation Committee, I believe, is about 12 members, including a student representative. So when we reformed that committee over a decade ago, it was, we were able to break into subcommittees based on our areas of interest because of the size. And I could see how, and again, merging the committees that do have a lot of overlap and a lot of, Ped and Bike safety as well as the parks, a lot of overlap, but yet some distinct areas. I could see how this could potentially work and probably save a lot of time for a lot of organizations. I understand what you're saying about either having concurrent meetings and at the end the 2 merge, or, you know, the one group starting at some time and then later, but it's a lot easier if everyone's in the same room. and you still
Yeah.
can break out.
I mean, that was sort of what I initially had said. I don't know if you were on yet, but that, you know, the HRC also does something similar. They have some subcommittee groups that have, you know, different focuses within the HRC, which is sort of, in my mind, what would happen here, that there would be, you know, a parks focus and a ped and bike focus that then would, you know, kind of come together under this, you know, community spaces place. But I do think like having that just in some sort of written proposal, just so, you know, if we move forward and want to present it to the full board, that can be obviously in the memo and just gives us some talking points to be able to say, like, this is why we thought through this and this is where we came from there. So
Makes sense.
Jennifer, I think you had something you wanted to add.
I did. I also, I would love to get some feedback from my committee, the Parks Commission, the members there. I mean, Tyler knows this. I just love every one of those guys. They're terrific. So I would love to get their thoughts on this as well and make it very open discussion for them as well. So if we had something written, Tyler, where everyone can read it and kind of see where you're aiming for, I think it would make everything clear, a clear discussion.
Yeah, what I could do, based on what I'm hearing, I think what we could do is I could prepare this for the October meetings. Maybe that would be a good opportunity, you know, to have both committees meet together and give that feedback together, just to see what that would be like. And then, you know, we can have your Parks business meeting before that joint meeting, and then Ped and Bike can meet after. So, you know, I think we get feedback in October, and then we could schedule another JP&L meeting where we report out on that feedback, and that would give you a chance to see that written proposal. The only question I would have for the JP&L committee is, do you want to see that written proposal before we get feedback from the volunteer committees, or is it okay if you would meet after I would get feedback from them? So
I'm okay with it after.
okay.
I think that makes it a little bit more collective. Trustee Ursink, you know, I want to hear what your thoughts are as well.
You know, I think you could probably, I agree with you. I think, you know, it would be nice to see, but I wouldn't hold it up with another JP&L meeting before sending it to each group. I think we all kind of understand where you're going with it. And if there's any glaring issues, I'm sure we'll reach out. It would be nice to see it, but I don't think, for me personally, you would need my approval to pass it on to each committee.
So I could just email it out, you know, a week or two prior, just to give you all a heads up on what I'm thinking. And then if you had major issues, you could just give me a call before I meet the two
That
committees.
works
So
for me.
Yep, works for me too.
Jennifer, did you?
So I had one thought here, and the previous chair of the Parks Commission was very insistent that the Parks Commission be known as a commission because it had some sort of legislative power or something like that. So how would that, does it have that? And would this affect the fact that we're a commission rather than a committee and that sort of thing? I guess I just need the nuts and bolts of all of this.
I can tell you, I don't know a significant difference on the names. I haven't looked at state statute to see how if Parks Commission is called out by any means. I mean, I could do that search real quick here, but in my experience, a committee versus a commission, I don't know if there's necessarily a difference there. You know, we have some, like the police commission is called out in state statute. So that commission would have, you know, it's labeled that way for a purpose and a reason. But the Parks Commission, I don't know if there's really a reason why it's a commission versus a committee.
I think the only thing, and I can double check too, Tyler, is from like a municipal level, like I don't want to say required to have, but those are the suggested type of commissions, like Plan Commission, Parks Commission, Board of Appeals, and Board of Zoning. Some people call them different things. It doesn't necessarily mean they have any different power per se. So I don't think they have power like the village board has power or the Board of Appeals has power. It's just recommended commission uses for municipalities. And it also depends, you know, we don't have a lot of undeveloped land, where municipalities that have a lot of undeveloped land that's municipal, they use their Parks Commission in a very different way.
Yeah. See, I'm just doing a research right now. Like the city of Wausau has a Parks and Recreation Committee. You know, it's not a Parks Commission for them. In Door County, you know, I'm getting Parks Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee for Ripon, Wisconsin. So Platteville has a Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee. So, you know, municipalities are going to use committee or commission. It's, in my eyes, it's fairly interchangeable.
Hey, Tyler.
Your question? Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jessica?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the things that, I mean, I understand it would be very beneficial to all of us if this were brought back to the committees as was recommended. And it would be kind of nice if that we're not just, well, we agreed that we don't want to do this or this. It would be nice to see kind of the pros and cons from those committees. That would kind of, you know, because then we could look for commonality and points if we were to go forward and ways and some of the fears, kind of like a mini SWOT analysis, but maybe without the T.
I'm going to geek out to that, Tammy. I can definitely do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be a great exercise. And I want to give them the option too of, if they stay in their committees, but we do like overlap joint, you know, meetings every quarter and go through those pros and cons too. Because like I said, there are several structures we can pick. You know, I'm not, whatever we end up going with, I'm going to be a full supporter as long as it improves collaborative efforts between these two committees. So I will give some feedback on some of the ideas we've talked about, and you'll get that pros and cons list.
Excellent.
Okay.
Trustee Ursig?
I hate to bring this up, to add this into the mix, but would there be any benefit to also including the recreation group, the rec group that also meets?
They're part of the school.
Oh, they're part of the school.
So they're kind of, we just appoint a person. So that's,
got it.
yes, if they, you know, depending on what they're working on, but they wouldn't be in collaboration with us from our committee standpoint. We just appoint somebody when their term is up.
Yeah, but Arthur, to that point, most communities have parks and recreation combined. So this is another example where Shorewood is a little unique in keeping recreation separate. But yeah, that's part of the reason is that's with the schools. That's a very unique organization structure. Most municipalities have recreation actually at the municipal level and not the school district level.
I feel like the recreation department works so closely with the parks and pet and bike. So there'd be some synergy there, but that makes sense.
I just had one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I just have to say, you know, I've gone to a lot of village board meetings and committee meetings and stuff because I've been interested in how Shorewood works, really. And Tyler and I talked about this, how a lot of these committees work in silos, you know, and then all of a sudden they make a decision and nobody else has known. Maybe the board knows, but the other committees don't know. For instance, you know, the public arts or the, you know, whatever. And I love the idea of communication, communication between all of these entities so that we can always know what's going on and maybe get more feedback, you know, or yeah, I don't know. I just want to say I love the idea of not being in a silo.
Yeah, I second that. Tyler, do we have a plan?
I think we do. I'm going to strive for October, and Rachel and Jenny with your committees, I'll reach out with an update later this week, and just let people know during the October meetings, we're going to structure them a little differently to allow some time to just talk openly about this and get some feedback. And then when we're done with that, Sarah and Trustee Carpenter, I will reach out to you to try to set up another JPNL committee meeting so we can discuss the feedback.
That would be great. Another thought too, Tyler, because I know, is it Pet and Bike that is short, that you're only have 4 members on right now to make quorum? You know, after the October meeting, we could definitely look at passing a resolution to temporarily suspend the rules so that the 2 committees could meet for a period of time, you know, and try a hybrid solution before we make the next appointment round in May. Just because I know we are coming up on the end of the year, it's approaching faster than we think. So that's something to consider after the 2 committees meet and talk about the pros and cons.
Okay.
If we don't want to appoint people and then decide that, you know, we do want to do a different merger.
I had not thought of that. I like that, Sarah. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I'm having some technical.
Okay, well, so I feel good unless any of the trustees or committee chairs have anything else for me. I have the direction.
Can you
So,
hear me?
yep, I can hear you, Jessica.
Sorry. I'm cutting in and out. Yeah, I do really like that idea, Sarah. I was also just going to say, you know, I think people get nervous when they hear about changes. And I think one of the things that we should reiterate is that the, you know, current members of each of the committees that are in good standing, you know, we're not asking if we, you know, if we consolidate these 2 committees into one, anybody
You're cutting out, Jay. Sorry, Trustee Carpenter.
Frustrating.
Yeah, we're not hearing many words. Sorry.
I think she's trying to reassure us. I like the face that it froze on. And I think, you know, I think I got enough of what she was saying to say, you know, we don't want to disengage active folks in the community. If I know Shorewood, I know that they won't let us disengage them. If they have an opinion, they're going to find a way to voice it. And we should just make sure that we're not losing the important mission of both of these committees, because I think, or the committee and the commission, because we do feel strongly and we do have good engagement there. So we just want to make sure that we protect that engagement and leverage it to the best that we can. So,
yeah. Rachel and Jenny, I have complete confidence in both of you too, that, you know, as we go through this exercise, that you'll be able to keep it, you know, like not panic mode, like we're just brainstorming, we're just thinking on how to improve, and that we can have a, you know, a good discussion around that. So, you know, knowing that, that's why I feel a little comfortable with us having this dialogue right now, and that it can be a positive experience. So I appreciate both of your leadership here.
It's got to be good for everybody, Tyler. So,
yeah.
And the mission is to get Shorewood working well. So,
yeah. These are areas I'm really passionate and I love about too. So, and I love the group. So I think this will be a really good exercise.
cool.
Okay.
So I think we have direction. Tyler, you have enough direction from here,
Yep.
and we have yeah. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Does anybody have anything else to add since I got kicked out and got back in? Love technology. Thanks.
I think if we're done, I would just need a motion to adjourn.
I motion
move to adjourn. Oh, and I second it.
Second.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.